You are interviewing persons whose salary is freaking 500 times your salary. And that guy's like, hey, can you get me a job? I'm like, wow, that is very, very exciting. It's an important understanding to look back on where education need was, specifically in India or especially colonized countries, where education was aligned towards building a certain set of employees.
Like I would imagine, right? Like one of the key things that we really underappreciate at sometimes is that if I'm having a conversation with you, the learning's completely different, right? When everybody's reviewing the episodes and going through the edit process, everybody has an opportunity to listen to the episode and take a different key. But if Anas was sitting here, it's going to be a completely different conversation. If Ghazala was sitting here, completely different conversation.
Of course.
Ari doesn't typically take the seat, so it's really hard to figure out how his conversation would go. But it's like there are 7 hosts, but how each 7 hosts approach it is completely different. Yeah, sure, we have like a set of questions that we probably thought about and brainstormed about. But apart from that, it's just a pure conversation. And there's so many things that you probably don't find online. There's so many things that you get directly from people which you never, ever be able to get. Like the different perspectives add so much value to us more than anything else. And like, if I have to be really honest, the entire premise of like, I would imagine like when I started, probably not now, but like when we started this, the entire premise is like, hey, it doesn't matter if it gets 1,000 views or 1,000,000 views on YouTube or anything. I have a unique opportunity to sit with individuals who open up my mind to something else. And that is an opportunity you typically don't get with a coffee or a networking event.
I started my life early on to be an executive search consultant. And it was a time when executive search consulting was not necessarily built. No, I think one of the things which is interesting is that what you just said is that when I started very early on in executive search at the highest level, it was a very unique position where you are interviewing a person whose salary is freaking 500 times your salary. And that guy's like, hey, can you get me a job? I'm like, wow, that is very, very exciting. It's actually very daunting initially. I'm sure it is sometimes for you as well if you have someone hardcore. But it's exciting to go back and say that or refer back on the conversations that University of Hard Knocks is for everybody. And I think that drives 2-3 learnings that you can do for anything in life. One, your purpose, mission, journey. Second, I think it becomes an opportunity to reflect back on people who have gone through that journey in their way. I am not at all reflecting on the fact that that should be your way.
Yeah.
And then eventually take out what you want, what you get inspired for, and build a hybridized situation around it. And I think that creates a far larger or far more emotional syllabus than just saying, hey, this is my index. I mean, I have studied in 14 schools. I went to university all over the world. I don't remember my syllabus, but I do remember the moment when my teacher told me that you flunked. Or, of course, I remember the time that, hey, you know what? You deserve better. Or, hey, you talk to the class. And every part of that journey, you reflect back and say, what happened? And that often is what, if you keep on revisiting, can become your habit and can also drive you. And I think in today's case, also can make your mind far more stronger with, mental health becoming such a big issue, especially in students. But it's if you see yourself as student of life, then you're not too bothered about it if your quarter didn't go well.
Yeah.
And I think that is an important...
Do you perhaps feel that a lot of how we feel like with education and everything, is it too rigid? Because you sit in a couple of boards and stuff, right? Do you think education system, whether it be the high school or the lower levels or even university for that matter of fact, do you feel like it is a rigid system? Because I come from an Indian schooling background, right? CBSE all throughout. Then I did my university here, which is an Australian syllabus. For me, that Indian syllabus felt like suffocating in the sense that, hey, this is how you do it. Fayol's 14 principles. You remember, I've never literally used 14 Fayol's principles, right? Fayol's 14 principles, you memorize, right? That's it. You want to do coding, memorize 40 Python programs and write it on a piece of paper, right? Do you still feel like that is the situation, whether it be higher education or your schooling system?
In fact, I'll take it a step ahead. I don't sometimes feel that even if the question is not your answer and you write it well in a good handwriting, you still pass.
It's like that Apsara ad, right? 101 for a good
exactly. No, but I to answer your question, I think it's an important understanding to look back on where education need was, specifically in India or especially colonized countries, where education was aligned towards building a certain set of employees. They were not aligned to setting up thought leaders. So if you see a lot of thought leaders, even who were Indian, including Mahatma Gandhi, including other top people, Radhakrishna and so on and so forth, were leaders who were actually educated overseas. Right? So the Indian education system very clearly is built to create rigor, repeatability, and it really pushes the mind to say that I will not go out of the box. And I think over the last 10 years, there's been many efforts. There's a realization. But, any change specifically, which is so integral, becomes difficult to execute to a point. But I think education is one of those industries which, if you look at if you look at a picture of a classroom 1500 years back,
hasn't changed one bit,
and today is the same classroom. I mean, you may have a better looking classroom, or
but
better,
the structure says the
it's
same.
exactly that.
1v30.
I mean, you can whatever. I mean, you can have, hey, you know what? I have a 1 to 5 student ratio, but it's still dimensional. How do you build emotion around learning is where the conjunction of thought and contribution comes in.
Okay.
If you look at education which drives a certain direction, which is primarily very Indian, I think it becomes very curtailing for any individual. It may not be only for K-12, but even for people who are in college or who are doing their masters, including PhD students, where the agenda is to create a certain dimension. And that stops the visibility of what you want to contribute in. And I think that is probably a big dimensional change that is bound to happen with AI, with technology in the hands of people. And, if you look at it, I was reading a survey and they said the top use of AI, people think it's capability, conversation on what you want to research on. It's not. It's really therapy. The top use of AI in the world is therapy. So people are having a conversation about it. And that makes sure that your ability to understand that you are seeking something which is not available in the syllabus. And I think that defines an opportunity for all of us to look back and also perceive for ourselves, and its age is learning, but also for what the next generation is coming up. So I don't want to tell you that this is your index. I don't want to tell you that, hey, come to office. And I'll give you an example of what we do. And very interestingly, some people don't like it. So we have a philosophy called bring your own device. But I grew up in my first job when I came to office and they said, hey, you know what? You cannot use an Android phone. You have to have a BlackBerry for whatever reason. And I think that creates the dimensional shift that, hey, security, safety is all based on cloud. So bring your own device, be comfortable in what you do. And I think that helps you create a conjunctional effort that where contribution expected out of.
I'm with you on the fact, right? Like this has been a thought in my mind for a very long time. Classroom 1500 years ago versus today literally looks the same, right? The dynamic is same. One person teaches, the other people listen and
Learns.
take notes, right?
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully, which 90% of time being a student never happens. But I understand that, like how you mentioned, right? Like students are designed to be employees.
The old system.
Yeah, but the conflicting thing is, like, if you look at the past 10 years, the number of startups and entrepreneurs in India kind of conflicts that information, right? Like, we know that the education system is built for making the perfect employees. But despite that, people who get good grades, good marks, go to the best universities within the country, go through the same system, still are able to come out of it and start businesses and do fancy things, right? Do you not feel like there is a conflict in the data we have? Because we definitely know this is the education system, but there are still people, no matter how good they do in the system, they still come out and become entrepreneurial and test new things out.
Well, I think that still is very, very minuscule to the reality of the number of students that pass.
Okay.
I think if you look at the objective of how many students have done that, I don't think
the percentage proportion is not,
may not be even visible to the number of people who seek getting a job. But said that, I think there is also social angle to it, which is just changing. I think entrepreneurship has become sexy over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
So it's
more
okay to
it becomes more acceptable socially.
It's acceptable.
Yeah.
And I think I'll give you an example of that. And these are very social dynamics. I was very young and I went to someone and they were having a conversation with me, and I say, hey, by the way, I just sold my company. So they had empathy in there. Like, oh, I'm so sorry. You sold it. I'm like, have you heard of investment for exits? But understand the mindset, that the ability to not understand what the businesses are meant for, because you think a job is when you go to office. That's it. You don't think what are you contributing in. And I think going back to our conversation about how education, how opportunities should make a difference of building value tomorrow comes from the capability of entrepreneurs making that difference for tomorrow.
Yeah. And I would imagine like a lot of it also has to do, like I remember seeing my family members do business, right? Like quote unquote business, where the business gets passed on to the next generation. It becomes a family business. It's like a regular revenue generating business. It's profitable, but there's no scale in that business. And I think like the idea of scale still isn't there in India, right? I've been to like so I don't know if you know this place called Kumali in Tamil Nadu. Okay, beautiful place. It's border between Kerala and Tamil Nadu. Beautiful hill region, not too tall. Like the weather's beautiful over there. And we were staying in this home. Like it was like a homestay situation where they have a large home, and like you get to stay. They do the food and everything, all these things. And we asked them, "Hey, can we use your washing machine? We'll pay for it. Oh, can we use your washing machine? We have a couple of clothes we want to wash." They were like, yeah, fine, sure, everything's good. We go there. It's a broken manual washing machine. And we were looking at it and we were like, how long would it take to like launder all these linen and put it up and everything? And if they make enough money to buy a new washing machine. It's just they don't, because they think this is enough. It's good. It's generating revenue. It's generating profit. It's good. And like they don't understand, hey, if I had a washing machine, maybe that time could be spent something else to scale. And that concept of scale and like that hockey stick growth of any sorts doesn't exist in a typical millennial age group at all. Right? I see that even with my family members, right? Like parents, they all like, hey, let me put a little bit money here, but money here, bit money here. But it never is like a, hey, what is the opportunity that I'm missing out on? The opportunity cost also completely out of the mind.
No, I think from a scale standpoint, I think India is a consumption market. I think Asia is a consumption market. In fact, I'll break it up the way I look at it. I think there are only 3 markets in the world. There is Americas, there is Europe, and then there is rest of the world. Right? And I'll put Japan, China into rest of the world, Africa and rest of the world. So America is very capitalistic. it's a mature market. It will put large money on things that they believe in, and they will be very objective. If it's working, it's not working, right? Europe doesn't work like that. Europe is like, I want to see legacy, I want to see history. So that makes it slow, but it also has very tight equations. So like I said, US is transactional for the benefit of being objective. Europe is legacy. The rest of the world, Middle East, India, GCC, Southeast Asia, Japan, China, are very relationship, right? So for them, when you are looking at scale, the relationship matters to scale. And I think a lot of countries in Asia were very isolated about pre 2008. And over the last 15, 20 years, there have been very strong definitional countries and survey markets that have come up. So if you look at Thailand, it could be tourism, it could be manufacturing. If you look at Philippines, it could be great back-end data centers. You look at Malaysia, it has a great technology, it has a great silicon chip manufacturing position. India is a very large country. So you have North India, you have South India, you have minerals that are in the central part of India, and that drives the agenda of what isolation can lead for partnership. And that's why relationship seeks partnership. Relationship seeks being inspired from each other. Otherwise, it becomes transactional. So if in any relationship, either personal or corporate, if your relationship becomes transactional, then that transaction doesn't lead to making your operative index more successful, because you have to be ingrained to do that. You can't be emotional, but at work you are executive, right? I can't, if I'm emotional and I have to hang someone, I can't do that job, right? But if I am not emotional, then maybe I can be a hangman, right? But the fact of the matter is, the fundamental play for organizations that are in Asia today are scaling purely because they have started to understand the value of partnership. And I think that will change purely because this partnership will bring, cohesive understanding and becoming better. Because when you're in one place, you get used to one place. And I'm sure you may have seen that you studied in India and then came out.
Indian system. Yeah. But in Dubai, yeah.
Yeah, Indian system. So you were, and then you moved out to a different system.
Yeah.
Both of that would have stretched you. But because that relationship happened in your academic, it made you a better person.
Definitely, yeah.
And again, it is not transactional. That is seen in the hindsight. So that journey of contribution is very critical. And that's why when markets like India are emotional markets will always look at short-term triggers. They will be very, very equated to profit. They would not understand 10 years of loss to make a systemic, incredible organization, because that is not their DNA.
Yeah.
But when you start partnering and you say, okay, this is my emotional equation, you focus on scale, which builds value, that partnership makes the world a better place. And that is the structure.
Like a puzzle piece, right?
Yes.
Like pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's why that is the opportunity over here that we sit on. And that's why it will be the easiest for capitalistic markets to understand emotional markets, because they're so beautifully different on different spectrums.
Yeah.
But really, the opportunity is to make sure that there is value. And in fact, UAE and GCC plays a critical position in the world to really address that, where this emotion and this capitalistic view can come together here and create an international MVP, as I often call it. And that will define innovation for tomorrow.
And do you also think like that's probably one of the reasons why like the Silicon Valley type VC structure hasn't worked like almost anywhere else in the world? Because nobody's ready to look at it as a purely objective play. Everything is emotional and connected to emotions, right?
Yeah, I have very strong views on that. I think in Asia, most VCs don't operate uh, the way VCs operate in the valley. In the valley, it is critical to look at putting in large capital for ideas you believe in. But in Asia, in relationship driven markets, it's typically IRR led.
Yeah.
I can't have an IRR for something that I'm emotional about. I hope my emotion is valued, because that drives the relationship, which is long term.
Yeah. But that is a problem, right? In the sense that what are the odds of that we will, like India or UAE for that matter of fact, will have the next OpenAI type startup? Because OpenAI is an innovative startup at the end of the day. Like no matter how you look at it or the long term ramifications of it, we won't, as it stands, like there is no opportunity for an OpenAI or an Apple or like anything brilliant to come out of these markets purely because of this reason, right? And that becomes a problem over a long period of times, because now it's a competition between who's the next superpower. Is it US? What is China doing? All these things. And nowhere in the equation, despite India's population, despite India's talent, we're having so much brain drain, like people moving out of the country and everything. Nothing happens in India, right? And over a long term, I would imagine it becomes a massive problem.
Sometimes you don't want to be an innovator. Sometimes you want to build on capability. And the reason why you don't see that is because innovation needs a certain kind of ecosystem. That ecosystem cannot be built part and parcel. I'm not saying that it's not being tried and it's not being done, but there is a natural ecosystem. It's like this: if you're going to a dentist, right, and you never brush your teeth, but the day you have to go to the dentist, you brush your teeth every 15 minutes. It will not make your teeth clean, right? So you have to do it every day, and that's what innovation is. Innovation is a consistent approach. It is not a reciprocatory approach. It's not an approach which says that, hey, you know what? I think that I have now going to spend next 5 years on innovation. No, it's a lifestyle. It is brushing your teeth every day, and I think the fact of the matter is that will lead to a certain culture. And I think we spoke about partnership, and I think that partnership will happen more and more as the world becomes smaller. So now it is no longer a domiciled country. You'll have people who are global. People will have choices to stay in many countries. This is the first generation in transition where there is transition of capital, which is generational wealth that is moving away. First time in life, there will be billionaire babies. There have been no billionaire babies before us. And this is going to happen next 10 years. So there is wealth being transmitted from one generation to the other, where the other generation has getting so much wealth or getting a lot of opportunities where they have to be validating what eventually they want to contribute in. And that is a very unique system. So there'll be people who will be innovating, there'll be people who will be executing, there'll be people who will be partnering. And I think what that does is that one should stop looking at world from a country perspective. It will be a regional perspective, and for the betterment of a world community. And I think that becomes the way we look at it. Dubai is a great example of that. 200 plus nationalities. If I start building something for one nationality, it won't work.
Yeah, terrible.
Primarily because that's not, I can't, if I set up a restaurant and I say, well, I'm going to make really hot food, super chili. Well, and there is a category for that. Great. But I can't build a market for everybody. So the equation of solving an apple or building an organization that cuts across everybody has to be looked at from a global perspective. And that's why, I often say that UAE is a great international MVP. It has opportunities, it has talent, it has great patience, and the ability to also give. It's a small geography, so you also feel in control. Versus if you go to a very large country like India, you're like, well, I've spent enough time and you named a city and I didn't know about it. I have lived in Chennai as well. I don't know that city, right? And that's the problem, right? And if you end up committing to something as purpose of life, you will at least get to a point where you will do something about it. Success, failure has a lot of different parameters, but I think you will continue to be committing to a certain set of people around who you would be proud that you have done something for someone.
And you were born and raised in India, right?
I was born in India,
Okay.
and I was raised in many states of India.
Oh, how did that happen? Like, why the continuous movement?
So I think it was a generation where if your parents were working in multinationals, they would keep transferring.
Okay.
And I think my father was very clear that he wanted to come back and mess me up. So he says he's not going to hostels. So, well, I was very, it was not very nice that time, but on the retrospect, I'm thankful he at least had that emotion that I want to. He grew up in a hostel scenario.
Okay.
Where both his parents were working, and so he would say when we finished school, we'd come back to an empty house. So he probably always felt that he wanted to have his children when he came back home. And so we moved along with him. And then, of course, work takes you to different countries, different continents. Studies take you to different places. Well, I've probably worked with more than 200 nationalities. And I mean, there were time when I remember there were 26 nationalities which used to report to me. And there were definitely 10 nationalities who were not understanding what I was saying. So it worked because you need to have a certain sense of people. And if you are able to understand emotion, you probably get through your idea better. And I look back and I say, I don't know that language. I don't know that person. How did I make that person do really well in their market? And they are saying thank you to me. And I'm like, I think it's a lot to do with making very clear aspects of journey more importantly than just a transaction or a response or a result. And I think that being young leaders works because if you are a leader who's a CEO at the age of, say, 55, traditionally, you probably have 5 years to perform and make your money, do well, name everything. But if you're a leader at 29, you're like, I'm not in a hurry to perform. I will continue doing what I believe.
Your risk appetite's also a lot more, right? Like in general.
Well, I think there's a lot of pressure. But I don't know risk in that sense.
Because I would imagine, like, if I was a CFO at 55, my next immediate goal is to retire, right? Like, that's definitely on the back of my mind. So when I retire, I don't want to have bad standings and everything. At the same time, I want to leave the company at a good standing that, hey, I get invited back if there's a backup opportunity, or if there is like other engagements, like contractual engagements, whatever
on
right?
The board or something.
Yeah, board or something, right? But if I was 29, I'm like, screw it, let's see what's the worst that can happen. And you take a lot more risk.
Yeah.
And what's the worst that can happen? They fire you. Next job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I think that says a lot, by the way. And I think it also gives you an opportunity to be more decisive, because and that sometimes is also purpose led, and sometimes young people defend their position so much that it gets to a point where they seem to be non-flexible. And on the other side, it becomes, hey, you know what, you are generally overprivileged, because it's very important to also learn that someone else is also doing stuff who is slightly elder to you, and you can also have a position for younger people. You can also have a position that you sometimes want to do things for others. And I think that is a very interesting part, because I remember my one of my very dear bosses telling me when I was very young that, hey, and there was no context of, millennials, Gen Y, Gen Z, whatever. He'll say that, hey, Pranav, you have a perspective and I was very aggressive, that if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work at all. He says, don't judge it the way you think. And I was of the opinion that, I want to get things done in a certain pace, certain objective. But I think it reflects back on today, where a lot of people are like me in that sense, where, hey, I am clear about what I do. How many times would someone in my generation, I don't think, very, very rarely would someone say that, hey, I'm a Apple person and your system is on Windows, so make an exception because I can't work on Windows.
Yeah, no, never.
Right?
No.
It's not going to work, right? And so I need to prepare for people who are just not accepting to work on Windows, while my 10,000 employees work on Windows. And you're a great guy, great fit. You are hired, and nobody in interview tells you that your system is based on Windows or Mac, right?
Yeah.
So imagine if I am not flexible doing that, I'm going to have a really pained employee who I loved, I interviewed, I hired, I had great expectation. And now, just because his choice, which by the way was not even his choice, a choice out of journey of his life, became a hindrance of his contribution to something that he loves to do. And I think that flexibility is from both sides. So I should give up. But if you can try to also try Windows, because, hey,
it's more like a middle ground, right? Like, hey, if you can be a little bit flexible, be flexible, right? Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. Sometimes the young leaders are not flexible, and they define that as purpose. They define that as purpose. I remember in my generation, early 2000s, late 2000s, we had this entire storyline that we should look at another operating system, which is neither Microsoft, neither Mac.
Like Linux?
It was Linux, it was Ubuntu later on. It was primarily that, hey, you know what? I am being aligned to a certain ecosystem and I'm free. You know what Ubuntu means, right?
Yeah.
So Ubuntu means that we belong, that we believe that we are free. That's like what Ubuntu means.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Okay.
And I think that defines, but can you scale? Every time if I come to you and we are aligning just that purpose, it's sometimes holding the young one back as well. And I think that's what we are saying, is that you have to have clarity on what you like, be strong enough to protect your thoughts, but also be a little...
Yeah, you don't have to be aggressive for the sake of being aggressive, right? Yeah.
That's the dimension often that it becomes like that. Because it becomes very aligned to your being.
Yeah.
It becomes everything is me. And I think that is something which helps around it. I mean, I have young people in my team who are very clear that, hey, I am a design thinking individual. And I'm like, great. This is, I only do this. I says, by the way, technology is changing. And I'm saying it as a sense of mentor. Technology is changing. You should learn some of these things. And, your effort will drive better if you do these things as well. And he doesn't, of course, he tries because I say that. But that person will never move up the ladder because his orientation is very specific. And he's very good at it. But in the larger scheme of thought, there are other quadrants which he could be easily a part of. But
there's no way to
he doesn't lead to that equation. So
that's something like I've noticed, like within the different generations, right? Like back in when I speak to my dad and everything, like, hey, if your boss comes and say do this, you do it. right now. You tell my friend that, hey, you do this, the first thing they'll do is pull up the job description, like this is not part of my job description. And I get the argument on why you do it, but also at the same time, hey, it's not going to hurt you much if you're learning a new thing in the process. If it's not,
again, see, this is education, right?
Yeah.
We were generally, a lot of times your journey of life is stereotyped, right? What you said right now, that your job is your KPI, was often aligned to, like I said, so it's a transaction, right? These are 5 things I do. So US is like that. They will not do anything apart from what is written on your KPIs, right? KRAs, right? These are the 5 things I signed up for. I will only do these 5 things. My boss can come and say no. And then India or relationship markets were generally stereotyped that what those KRAs are, those people are not doing that totally. They are not doing that. They're doing something else totally. Because, and that was, even as a executive recruiter, you would say that job descriptions are farce. Whatever is written in job description, you don't do at all.
Yeah.
Right? So what does it take for it to be a good cultured organization? Good cultured employee is to be close to the mission. And if your mission is driving a certain objective which people know and they are doing, and they're aligned to certain people, then you are able to drive possibilities for tomorrow. And I have seen this with great entrepreneurs. I have seen this with great organizations, that they at the core are mission driven.
Yeah.
If you look at, I often speak about a credit card company, American Express. There are so many other credit cards who are cheaper than American Express. American Express may be one of the few ones which still charge you quite a bit to use their credit card, right? Everything else is free. Everything else gets. But the way American Express deals with you is significantly different with other partners. So your mission is to have a customer. Your mission is not to only make profit.
Yeah.
So the ability to continue making a opportunity investment becomes far more tangible when you are linked with a mission.
Yeah. I would imagine like a lot of it is also driven by the founders and the CEOs of the company, right? Like the immediate example that comes to my mind is my day job, right? My day job, we work in fit out and interior design and renovations, right? The core objective of the business is to provide the best service for the clients we take on, right? It's a very simple focus. So everything, that is how it was ingrained to us on part of the onboarding, everything. It's like, hey, what do we do to improve the customer experience? What do we do to remove friction? What do we do to do this? What's the best way to deliver this thing? And when it's instilled from that, the culture is beautiful. Like everybody's aligned with that one goal, that hey, the customer experience has to be beautiful. But in a lot of cases, like there is that shareholder versus stakeholder split in a lot of cases, right? Where the shareholders are looking for that exit valuation and they're like building a business, no matter hell or high water, build businesses. We've dealt with one of a business, like one of our vendors at the moment, actually. Like I don't want to name them because we're going to kick them out. But one of the vendors, what we've noticed is that they build a company. Like when we had a chat with them, they know, hey, 5 years, I'm going to exit to a particular company. The likelihood of that happening is probably minuscule, but this is the objective they're building against. And they put all of their resources and effort and energy into that. What they forget to notice is that their churn rate is so high. So they are an AI company. They're a core where the core is engineering, and the engineers keep churning out. Every day there's a new engineer taking care and they leave. Come, go. Like I haven't seen an engineer.
So they are not mission driven, right? They are transaction driven.
Purely valuation driven, right? Like their focus is that.
And I think we were talking yesterday with one of our co-investors for a company which just got listed. And that founder has been trying to list over the last 14 years.
Wow. Okay.
The fundamental equation which the investor board was saying that, he had challenges, but if he had looked at the valuation route, then fundamentally he would have got a higher valuation than before he went public. So at public, he had got a lower valuation. It's often at the entrepreneurial level, it's not about the exit.
Yeah.
Right? So until unless you're so transactional on the example that you said, it's about the journey.
Just to cut you off, right? Like, then would the purpose probably be that, hey, I want to be a part of a list. I want to list my company being the mission, rather than, hey, I want to list it as an exit.
Yeah. So I think it's never a list as an exit, because the entrepreneur finds it always very difficult to make money off an exit, because if the entrepreneur himself is selling his stock publicly, then why should other investors invest money in it? And I think that becomes a chicken and egg situation. But I think if you are generally mission driven, then the reason why you go public is because you want to institutionalize the efforts. You have to build value for tomorrow, and you have to create a consistent approach of creating a success and creating possibilities of how organizations last for a long period of time.
Yeah. Which we see quite a bit, right? Like, a lot of companies, like, the immediate example that comes to my mind is one of these companies that would list, an Egyptian company that was listed. They listed, and immediately everything fell apart and crashed because it wasn't built for long, right? It was built to list, and they listed and they're out, right? And we do see that with quite a bit of, like, even in Silicon Valley type companies, like we see like companies like Uber and things becoming profitable very late and all these things. So that is a fascinating structure, right? Like, it is like finding that right balance between being profitable and just doing it for the sake of listing and no care in the world about what happens tomorrow.
I think there are two things to it. I think profit is, first of all, an accounting term.
Okay.
So it's great to be profitable, but you need to be very clear what are you making profits for?
Okay.
Right? Are you making profits? What if you are the best company in the world and you are making profit? What does the individual or the company do with it? And you're clear in the next 5 years, you don't want to innovate. Okay. You just want to make sure what you are doing, you do well. Right? And you are at capacity. You're number one. What will you do money for? What will you take the money for? Really nothing. It's not exciting enough.
Okay.
So profit is an accounting term. But making money is making sure that your business has a positive, successful margin. And that has to be understood, because that margin defines your legacy. Profit is often manipulated, but margins are market-led. So if you're in a business, which happens a lot, an entrepreneur comes to us and says that, hey, I'd like to be invested into. I said, it's okay, what's your business model? And he explains the business model. He's a great guy. And he say, hey, my margin is 1%. I'm like, so why should I put my money on 1%? I'll just put money in the bank. The bank will give me 4%. Right? So what does it take for me to? But then he says, hey, it's not. Then I am looking at it as a sequence of what it really means from the mission standpoint. If he says, hey, by the way, this is the margin, it will make money. But the mission is to make this impact in the society. And if that mission resonates with me, then it becomes investable. So it's not profit. It's about margin management, and it's about creating legacy.
Right. That's where I have a problem, right? Like, in your position, wouldn't that be a conflict, right? Like, you would say that, hey, this has a broader, great impact in the environment, right? But then you also are supposed to report to people who given you money.
Correct.
Right? So it's like a conflict, right? Like, hey, if the investor for you comes and tells, like, why put it over here when I can put it in a bank and get a higher interest rate, right?
So that's a great question. But the way that is happening is that historically, there has been a lot of money which has come from institutions, right? And that change, and actually UAE is taking the lead in that, that change is happening where now that money is coming from family offices, right? So the fundamental play for when I take money from an institution I'll give you an example. If I have a credit card and I go to the ATM and take money out from the credit card himself is going to charge you 1% a month, right? Because that amount is 0.75% for him for that credit card partner, right? You at the same time, you can go to your friend and say, hey, I need the same amount of money. I'm good. And the market rate is 15%, 0.75. The person will give that money to you because that's the market rate. So institution returns are based on the institution's commitment to their prior lenders. Family offices don't look at investing like that. Family offices say that, hey, you know what? I have been in the car business. I do great stuff on cars. And I think there is an opportunity where electric vehicles will start playing a key part. So we need batteries for that. So earlier when we had a car business, we also invested in a refinery business. So now we are in the EV business. So we should invest in a data center business. The reason of going to a data center business is not because there's a IRR. There is a partnership. There's an understanding. There's a usability. And I think that becomes a reason of why investment is done. And for us, that is a core part. And that's where partnership, understanding the business, and it's heavy lifting. So it's far easier if you have nothing to talk to the entrepreneur and just ask an entrepreneur 3 questions. When is my money back? Is my returns in place? Are you doing something about it? Game over. Versus the other questions that for us, which are family offices, is like, hey, how can I help you in building businesses? Are you considering these new partnerships which increase your EBITDA? Are you looking at these 4 new companies who we are invested into who may be able to help you increase your sales pipeline? And I think that becomes a very heavy equation that builds value around it. And I think that is an opportunity that we all feel is being consolidated. And that will take a huge change in the way we see PE operate. PE have always operated in operational control. VCs have been far more, happy-go-lucky, if I may use the term. But there is a VC plus PE minus approach. And I think that is where family offices sit really well. And entrepreneurs who are reinvesting back their successes also like to sit there where they say, take my experience, just like they would do in a PE setup, but I want to be in still the happy VC environment where there is an opportunity to make an incredible impact, because it has to start from something new. Usually PEs are turnaround investments. Right? VC is far more new, engaging. Entrepreneurs are
slightly riskier, but like it's a long.
I would call it far more exciting. Right? I don't want to work with a 75-year-old who I don't even know what he did last 25 years. But I want to work with a 25-year-old who is willing to, who I am willing to invest not necessarily in this organization. Because I may fail. I'm doing it again for him.
But it's like the dynamicism, right? Like, I think this is a conversation Anas and I usually have, right? Anas will come to me and say that, man, we're looking at this steel plant. They've been doing this. I'm like, mate, I can't be. This is really, really, really boring. There's no dynamicism. A steel plant has been doing steel for like the past 100 years. There's nothing new. Like, there's probably some innovation, but it's not as exciting as being like with ideas, with people, with entrepreneurs, with creative ways to solve like a very common problem, right?
So I think what is important over here is to realize that there are going to be innovations in mature businesses. And in fact, those innovations will come from VC businesses.
So are you saying in terms of like acquisitions and all those things?
It has to be an M&A situation, right? Let's take an example of offices, and that's when WeWork came in picture. That the question is, I always knew when I had 10,000 employees and my head of real estate in my employ would say, okay, now you need another 1,000 people. So we need to buy another building, rent another building. Now, I am not in the business of buying a building. I'm not in the business of renting a building. I'm in absolutely no business of facility managing that building.
Yeah.
But I am starting to do that because I have 1,000 people there. And they say, hey, why don't I get just plug that into WeWork, where fundamentally they have the opportunity to focus on their specialty and we focus on our work. And I think that becomes partnership again. That your ability to look at partnership is not to look at necessarily on equity level. It's to become better. It's like, I have a partnership with my driver because, I feel that I am very, very effective in a car. Now, I can choose to be driving a car too. But two things happen if I drive the car. One, I'm putting myself at risk because I have 100 things in my mind. Second, I am losing the opportunity to work in my car. So my driver becomes my partner. So I don't see his cost as his salary, which could be for people, could be seen at expense.
Yeah.
I am seeing it.
It's an opportunity.
It's an opportunity for that 3 hours when I'm moving from, say, 5 o'clock, I'm moving to in a traffic zone. I have quiet time. I can have a conversation. And I think that partnership also has visibility of making you better.
Yeah. And that, like, coming back to that Indian mindset, right? Like, I feel like we don't value in general, like at least with my case, like my parents and my family members, they don't understand that value of that opportunity that you mentioned. Hey, having this driver could do wonders in general, right? Or like a common problem that I have back at home every night is that, hey, why are you coming late from office? And I'm like, hey, I work in JLT, I live in Dera. If I come during peak hours, I'll be stuck in traffic for 2 hours. If I come a little late, I get a little bit work done. I don't sit in my car all day. I'm here in 30 minutes. And that equation never works out. You're late at work. You're spending so much time at work. You don't do this, that. And that is a concept, like, it is very, very, very hard. I would imagine it's very hard to ingrain in the future generations as well, right? Like, I'm lucky.
Tell them work happens after the work hours. Yeah. In the whole day, nothing happens.
So for me, I have this weird configuration with my company where everybody's work starts at 8:30. My work, technically, I've asked them 9:30, but I kind of show up at around 10. And then I go in at 10. The day goes by, like, until lunch. I don't know what happens. It's mostly replying to a few emails here and there. Lunch comes. After lunch, only work actually starts. Like, genuine work starts after lunch. And like, it goes on till like 7:30, 8, and when everybody's gone by 5:30. And it's very hard to explain to my mother, like, hey, I go in late. There is a reason I come out late as well. Like, I go in late to dodge the traffic, come out late to dodge the traffic. And if I do spend that exact time, yes, I will be there, but I will be home back at the same time anyway. So it doesn't make sense. And that's kind of the problem, right? Like,
so
I've seen,
see expense, and that's what I was saying. If it's seen as expense,
yeah,
then it becomes,
you'll never be able to justify it. Yeah.
No, then you have to justify it. Yeah. Right? It's like, I spend a lot on this new kitchen of mine. It's like, great, awesome.
Yeah, but you still cook food.
But no, do you cook? Do you cook?
Yeah.
It's like, no. I say, so how much did you spend on the kitchen? He says, I spent whatever, 20,000 dirhams in it. And he says, hey, do you cook? He says, no. He says, so why don't you just get a hotel, pay them 20,000 dirhams and say, send them food every day and make it by the way you want to. So it's really equational value that you want to address. Some people may want a kitchen. Some people just want food. So the way you look at it, like the way you are looking at it, is that I don't want to waste my time driving back in peak traffic time and build that value. And I think that's a very smart way of doing it. I remember my office was, the Commonwealth Games in India were happening in 2009. There is incredible amount of traffic on the roads, but they still cut the roads into half because of international travels and stuff like that. So it anyways should take us 2 hours. and then it started taking 4 hours. So, and I used to stay on the other side of the city. And I'm like, this is not making sense. And I need to get to office. So I said, I am not starting at 6 o'clock in the morning to reach at 9 o'clock because that doesn't work. So I used to go park my car at the train station, take the train to the closest station because the other side of the city, and walk, which luckily was close by. But the thought process of you parking a car, going 20 minutes away, taking the train, which theoretically was generally just one transaction. So you have to perceive things on multiple levels, and what works for you may not be working for someone else. So fundamentally, think about it like this. If you were to say that I'm going to give you 3,000 dirhams a month to reach home every day at 8 o'clock to do something, you'd probably say, well, if that is the case, I probably get a driver, or I let go of that 3,000.
Yeah.
So you would start considering. So you have to visibly understand what is expense and what you want to gain. Very similar to profit versus legacy. That sometimes profit may not necessarily mean that you are growing, but sometimes your ability to create legacy is something that you will help be in the system for so long that you create possibilities for you to leapfrog at the time of opportunity.
Yeah. I'm sorry, we're rotating back, right? Like that opportunity concept, right? Like another example, like which I see quite a lot with Indians in general, is that they live here in Dubai or like Singapore, or some people in Hong Kong and all these places, but they will spend exorbitant amount of money to build a home back in their hometown, which they visit once a year. Case in point, my family, I've seen so many families, they build a home in India, and every time I ask my parents, hey, why? We live here like 90% of our life. We go there for a month every year. Why do we need
house
such
is a mess?
House is a mess. We have to have extra expenses to clean up the house, keep it in good condition. Before we come, we need to do all these things. When we go there, bulbs don't work, pipes don't work, these things don't work, things are rusted, everything. And I'm like, we could have spent that money here. We could have,
get me a driver.
Get me a driver. There's freehold properties here. We could have spent there. We could have avoided paying rent for so long. And they're like, yeah, but what about retirement? And yeah, but retirement's cool, but like you don't plan for retirement 25 years in advance, right? Like that is also like I don't know, it's very unique. Like I
think the generation of our parents, your parents for sure, had a prolonged feeling of what is home.
Yeah.
And I don't think the next generation has that.
I would say the next generation. So I see my cousins who are raised and born and brought up in India, they have that. Me being born and brought up here, I don't have that.
Let me give you, in my thoughts, in my experience, I think the ability to identify a home or where you are from or where you belong are two different things. And people confuse that because you may live in that house where you think it is your home, but you may not necessarily think it is your home after 60 years. Are you saying that where you stay today or wherever in the world, you want to stay in the same place when you are 60 or when you retire? I don't think so, because there may be better things that may come around. Dubai is a great example. Well, hey, you know what? This was Dubai 10 years back. This is a cool place. 10 years hence, there is, hey, I have other cool places. So am I connected to my coolness, which is 10 years old, or what I want to be ahead? And after 10 years, it will be even different. So I think people confuse with the romantic thought of a location of retirement very early, because things are changing very quickly. The generation before also did not have the opportunity to think otherwise, because things are also not changing so quickly, right? It's an opportunity today. And I see a lot of young people your age, our age, who already have multiple homes. They've invested in multiple homes, right? An average Indian or even, I think, middle class around the world would typically buy something at the age of 55, right? So their orientation of going to homeland was based on the fact that this is what they want to, where they want to be. But today the world is becoming smaller. You may want to retire in Spain. You may want to say, fine, I'm going to be staying in Lakshadweep. I am an hour away from wherever I am. And I think that is what you eventually decide. And that's also in how organizations are. It's ever evolving. You're being in a certain position, build a certain value, and you create opportunities to create success around it.
Yeah. Do you also perhaps think that it's a reference point issue? Like, for example, my reference point is my dad, right? But my reference point, apart from my dad, is also the wider internet, where I see a lot of people doing these things: retire in Spain, retire in Italy, retire in a beautiful village in Greece. These are things I'm exposed to. But when what my dad had was his dad, and maybe the reference point was my mom's dad, right? And this is what they did, right? They came back, wherever they worked, they put their money back in hometown. So
they did not have money.
Yeah,
please understand.
Yeah.
Out of the generation where global wealth was not of the same level what is today.
Correct.
So for the opportunity to even think that I have a choice of going back home was not necessarily a new home. It could have been just my going back to my ancestral home, because that's all I have. I go back to my farmland. I go back to enjoy. I have some money, great money, but I still have my farmland, which I still am doing some stuff. But the fact of the matter is that I think in today's generation, that concept has become irrelevant for global people. It may still be the case for people who are in the tier 2, tier 3, who still go back to higher cities validation. But I think it becomes necessarily for urban children, urban youth, young people who don't consider anything which is aligned to where they will be, because the world is becoming, today we speak of Spain, maybe it's something else eventually. Maybe it's Mars. And I think it's 40, 50 years from now, there's so many things that can change. So why do we want to be so objective about it? What is a home? I think the purpose of journey is aligned towards making people around you successful. You end up becoming very aligned towards the success of what your journey will be. And I think, death becomes an inevitable data point in that, because tomorrow you have, when you have whatever you can do in your journey, everybody goes back in the same way.
That's a very nice place to probably wrap up the conversation. But before we wrap up the conversation, just for the general audience, that I have to do is, can you explain what you do?
We have two aspects of the work that we do. We are a multi-family office at Mirai Capital. We work very closely within global governments, work very closely between positions, not only which create value within the society, but also bring entrepreneurs together, help them create, scale up within their markets as well internationally, between B2B relationships and B2G. The unique situation is that because we are a part of government situations, we have great large government relationships which can bring startups as key players to make capability difference and technology difference with a creative new intent. On the other side, we also have LPs or partners who invest in us, who also are open to these startups or organizations that are going through a transition, to make sure that they can imbibe their partnerships across. So at one level, we are VC, but we operate in a pre-PE environment because we take operative control. And if we work together, we see working together as a part of our due diligence. And while we are doing that due diligence, we understand we are able to succeed together. We are happy to put in capital as well.
Right.
And I think that for us creates a very similar semantics of how a grandfather-grandson approach is. where the grandfather says, okay, I'll give you the money for your first lemonade stand. If your lemonade stand does well, I will happily invest in 10 of your other lemonade stands plan. So while you are building your first lemonade stand, when a corporate term becomes an MVP or international MVP, we realize that how entrepreneur teams, people are dealing with that situation. And are they even perceptive about what customers want in different markets? Do they really have it in them to get a global visibility? And while all of that happens, and we help them do that, we also become the partner to them if we feel relevant for capital uptake. And that's clearly with an intention of creating a legacy impact and build structure.
If I notice something on your LinkedIn and some job descriptions, I've noticed that you're also part of the family office over here,
Yeah.
and Mirai Capital, which is a Japanese-based firm, right? How do you balance both, or is that both linked in some way?
It's linked in some ways, where fundamentally a lot of our venture debt comes from Japan. So we have a lot of Japanese families who we work with, who consolidate their intention of coming to UAE or move out of Japan.
Okay.
India has been a great beneficiary, and now UAE is going to be a large beneficiary. We have large Japanese families who are moving here. Japan families have had great love for UAE with the Toyota story. And I think that becomes an element for us to be their partners in creating that bridge. And we have a similar equation in companies that are growing up in the valley. So there is really bringing the East and West together to the mid part of the world. And I think that creates an opportunity for all of us to be not only partners, but also be long-term investors.
Couple of things, right? Like when you started your journey, you didn't start with the intention of being here, right? Because
a fund manager.
yeah, because
Yeah.
I've seen like you were part of like HR teams, you were part of like, you started off as a BD and like grow up, and you were briefly CHRO of VLCC and everything. What was the transition like? How did you transition from CHRO to a fund manager of sorts?
So I think one of the things that became very clear, even my role as CHRO was a business role. So I think we didn't have roles or designations those era, but I've always worked in the chief of staff kind of an environment, if that makes sense. So worked very closely with the boards, very closely with CEOs. And I think there have been three objective conversations always when you're building a firm. And that's where I have spent all my time in building firms. So one has been people, that find the right people, who are the people who can be ambassadors and help those people win. Once you find the CEO and once you find the head of your function, that person, because you have been very close to that individual, ask that, hey, where are the areas that I can find, or you have other friends who can kind of come together to build value. So that becomes BD, right? So if I'm working, I put you as a CEO of a company and your mandate as a CEO is to move internationally, and you have, say, Anas, who is another friend of mine who is running a firm internationally, it doesn't take too much for me to introduce you to Anas and say that, hey, guys, work together, similar kind of ethos, this is the agenda, he wants to come here, you want to scale up your business, so build something. So it becomes a strategic M&A in a lot of ways. And then while you're doing that, find capital to build that value. So the journey for us, for me, has been very operative. Again, we don't see fund management as managing people's money. We use it as an instrument because we want companies to become institution, be successful, have people who feel that they have had other friends within partners who can help them scale up as well.
Yeah. And I would imagine like you do see a lot of entrepreneurs and startup founders, CEOs on your day-to-day basis. If I have to ask, like, what is one trait in the people you meet that you absolutely hate?
Hate?
Yeah.
hate is a tough word. I stay away from hate, but I think a dismissing attitude
Okay.
is something which I don't appreciate.
And what do you mean by dismissive?
I think someone who lets other people down purposely and saying that you're not good enough and I will tell you what to do, and take a forceful position. I think it's important to be kind of cognizant in helping people succeed, because success comes to people who continue to strive. And it's not based on an algorithm.
And throughout your journey, is there one opportunity or one founder you met that you probably passed up on but wish you didn't?
Oh, there are many.
Okay.
There-
Anything that sticks out?
Well, there are a couple I can't name here, but yeah, I mean, I had a meeting with a founder, which today is a $20 billion firm. They make $2 billion of profit, and we took a stake, but we could have raised that stake very easily. In fact, just swiped a credit card for that, but we didn't. We did do a personal investing, but we could have taken a larger pie of the firm. I think one of the things which become important in this question when you're passing off entrepreneurs is also situational. You like the entrepreneur, but you may not like the business that time. But that business then pivots into doing something else.
Yeah.
And that's the business that was actually meant to be, and you were not there. The organization is the same, but it's not necessarily was.
It's a circumstantial thing, right? Like maybe if you invested in, the company may not have become what
And
it's supposed to
there
be.
are many companies where when you invest in something and when you actually exit are two separate companies. They are not necessarily the same company. So it's there are organizations where I have seen paper napkin presentations which are billion-dollar enterprises. And some of them are friends. They are still people who would take my view, take my advice. And we keep it like that. It's not about, eventually, it's not about the money you would have made over there. But I think one of the things you take away is the fact that they're still your friend. You have access to them. And the joke is that I hope that whenever I come and you are busy, you can cancel the meeting.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Pranav.
Thank you so much. It's been a joy.
I've had a 3-page dossier on what to ask you, and I didn't touch any of them. And that just means that we'll have to have you on one more time to continue the conversation.
No, thank you guys. It was fun.